Good evening. Welcome to the May 6, 2019 Troy City Council meeting. We are pleased this evening to have Pastor Simeon Timbuk from the Bethesda Romanian Pentecostal Church with us to lead us in the invocation. So please rise for that and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening, Pastor.
Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight and we are thankful and grateful for your love, for your grace, and I ask you to bless the meeting tonight, bless the mayor and the city council with wisdom and understanding, bless the city of Troy, the families in Troy, the state of Michigan, and our great country, the United States of America, with your protection and guidance. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Troy City Council meeting is now called to order. The roll call, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Slater?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Henderson?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
Councilmember Pennington?
Here. All present. First on the agenda are certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have two this evening. C3 will be postponed to the next City Council meeting. C1 is a proclamation in recognition of the 27th annual NALC National Food Drive to stamp out hunger on Saturday, May 11th, 2019. And I would like to make a presentation to Randy Begathy, Troy Postmaster, and Alex Viviano, National Association of Letter Carriers, Troy Rep. If they could meet me at the podium, I'd like to present a proclamation. You got a couple. Let's go on this side. Yep. Stand right here. Thank you for joining us this evening. It's my privilege to present a proclamation. National Association of Letter Carriers, the 27th Annual Food Drive Day, May 11th, 2019. And I'd like to read this proclamation. Whereas America's second harvest reports that 50 million Americans, approximately 1 in 6, are hungry or at risk of hunger, and 37 million Americans receive emergency food assistance from large and small food banks across the nation. Whereas 17 million children, approximately 1 in 5, and 9 million seniors who live in the United States at the poverty level receive food assistance. 1 in 4 people in a food kitchen line is a child. Whereas poverty adversely affects birth weight, abuse and neglect, education, and the general health of our children and senior citizens. And whereas the National Association of Letter Carriers, better known as NALC, in conjunction with the United States Postal Service, USPS, is sponsoring the 27th annual NALC National Food Drive to stamp out hunger on Saturday, May 11th, 2019. And whereas NALC Branch 3126 in the city of Troy is participating in the National Food Drive, the largest one-day food drive in the nation, because the cost of inaction is too high, particularly in the face of many negative outcomes of our children and community which are preventable. And whereas more than 1,400 local branches of the 300,000 member Postal Union collected a record 80 million pounds of food in last year's drive for local food banks, pantries, and shelters, helping families throughout the nation. More than 1.6 billion pounds of food has been donated through the quarter-century history of the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive Day. So now, therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and City Council of the City of Troy hereby proclaim May 11th, 2019 as National Association of Letter Carriers Food Drive Day in the City of Troy, in celebration of 27 years of generosity and community support. And be it further resolved that we invite all Troy residents to leave non-perishable food at their mailboxes on Saturday, May 11th, 2019, to support our local letter carriers in their 27th annual food drive to help alleviate hunger in our community and throughout the nation. This is presented the 6th day of May 2019, is signed by myself and all members of City Council. Gentlemen, thank you so much for what you do to stamp out hunger. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right here.
All right.
Talk to him.
Yeah, talk on, okay. Well, I just want to say thank you. I mean, it's my first year in Troy as postmaster of Troy, and it's quite an honor to be standing here in front of everybody and the residents of Troy to say, can't tell you how much we appreciate everybody's participation, but more importantly, those people that are hungry. I listened to some statistics at a recent meeting where 75% of all food that goes in the local food banks come from the one-day event that's supported by the NALC and the post office. 75%. As the mayor said, it's staggering to know that 1 in 4 kids are hungry. Yeah, the United States is a great country. Troy's a great city. We got to take care of our own. This is our one day, residents of Troy. This is our one day to show that we can take care of everybody. And you never know. Your next door neighbor could be one of those ones that wants food. So thank you for your time.
My name's Alex Viviano. I've been here before. I've been a letter carrier here in Troy for 28 years. I've been here for all of our food drives. And I love the support that Troy does. And that you guys do a great job here. And I see some people that I know I might deliver to your house or what have you, but I appreciate what our city does, and I'm always supportive of our city, and I hope you guys support our food drive. You need to help us stamp out hunger. Thank you.
C2 is a proclamation in recognition of Motorcycle Awareness Month, May 2019. I would like to make this presentation to Pete Cazales, Troy resident and member of the American Bikers Aiming Towards Education. If you could come to the podium, I'd like to present this proclamation. Pete?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, council
Probably
members.
Councilman Henderson should probably be reading this.
All right. Yeah.
Let me read this into the record, okay? Thank you, Pete. Once again, it's an honor for me to present a proclamation for Motorcycle Awareness Month, May 2019. So whereas the safe operation of a motorcycle requires training, use of good judgment, and thorough knowledge of traffic laws and licensing requirements. And whereas more than 500,000 licensed motorcycle operators in Michigan, motorcycle safety education and training is extremely vital in our state. And whereas the Michigan Department of State's Motorcycle Safety Program uses safety standards established by the Motorcycle Safety Foundation in order to ensure consistent and comprehensive training for all motorcycle operators. And whereas it is the responsibility of all motorcycle operators to ensure they have the proper skills, training, and education in order to keep our roads safe. And whereas the month of May is the nationally recognized month motorcycles become more prevalent on our streets, and the need to be more aware of their presence is the utmost urgency. And whereas during this month, we raise awareness of motorcycle operator education training and programs and encourage all drivers in Michigan to drive defensively and cautiously in order to reduce motor vehicle collisions and, of course, save lives. And whereas an overwhelming number of car versus motorcycle accidents could be avoided with due regard, respect, and awareness of motorcycles on the streets and intersections in the city of Troy. And whereas the inclusion of motorcycle awareness provided by American Bikers Aiming Towards Education, better known as ABE, of Michigan, as a distinct part of driver education curriculum and motorcycle rider education programs help promote safe driving and motorcycle riding practices. So now therefore be it resolved that the Mayor and City Council of the City of Troy, in the interest of our citizens, note the increase in the amount of motorcycle traffic as we enter the warm months and hereby proclaim May as Motorcycle Awareness Month in Troy. And be it further resolved that we encourage all drivers to drive defensively and cautiously in order to reduce accidents and injuries involving motorcyclists and save lives, of course. Pete, this is presented the 6th day of May 2019. Once again, it's signed by myself, all members of City Council. Thank you for what you're doing to bring awareness for motorcycles and safety. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Pete Kazelis. As the mayor said, I am with ABEDE of Michigan. We are here primarily to save lives and spread motorcycle awareness. And on that note also, we try to encourage non-cell phone usage while you're operating your motor vehicle. So that's another thing that we are really big on trying to prevent is the huge distracting use of the phone that results in many collisions, not just with motorcyclists, but with other motor vehicles as well. So tonight and here on out, please be very cautious wherever you may be traveling to. So thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you. That concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations. C3 will be presented at the next council meeting due to, I believe, a birth. So we certainly don't want to interfere with that. That's more important. There are no carryover items, so we will move to public hearings. We have one public hearing this evening. E1 is the adoption of the 2019-20 annual city budget and three-year budget. And I will introduce City Manager Mark Miller, who will make a short presentation, I believe.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. First, I want to thank Tom Darling for all the work he's done on this, and every single department head who happens to be here and staff that contributed to this document. It truly is a team effort. Secondly, This is our recommendation. However, we did add the Niles Barnard House and the Sylvan Glen Clubhouse funding to our recommendation that will be included in the budget. Final budget documents which will be prepared after the budget is approved. Of course, we did conduct study session meetings on April 11th and 15th, and we went into great detail of what the budget contains, and we really won't do that this evening. Tom, when I asked Tom for advice what I should say, he said, Mark, the most important thing, it's a balanced budget. The 3-year budget approval is actually for 5 funds: the general fund, capital fund, refuse, general debt service, and the library. Also, this budget will help implement the strategies adopted by City Council. It includes $168.7 million for all funds, $65.9 million for the general fund, $21.3 million for the special revenue funds, and $14.4 million for the capital fund. Proposal A and the Headley Amendment do affect this budget. It rolls back or reduces our millage rate 0.0484 mils. And it does impact the amount of money that tax funds that we can draw in due to the Headley Amendment. With that, we will answer any questions you have, and that's our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I will open this public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this item this evening? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and return it to the council table for a resolution. Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move E1, adoption of the 2019-2020 annual city budget and 3-year budget as printed.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Baker and supported by Councilman Pennington that we approve E1, which is the adoption of the 2019-20 annual city budget and 3-year budget as presented and printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? I know that most questions were answered during the budget process. I've struggled for the past few days, quite honestly, about whether I was going to vote for the budget or not. And I still struggle, but I'm having an issue with voting for this 3-year budget that includes the language for the library, along with trails and pathways. So I want to thank the city management for your hard work with the funds that you were given and what you have to work with. I know in year 3, when I see TBD, I have a problem. And I wish we could have had a further discussion about the library and some charter issues, but that failed. So in my conscience, I cannot vote for this budget this evening. So having said that, could we have the vote, Ms. Dixon?
Mayor Slater?
No.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thanks again to staff and everyone that worked so hard on this budget. I certainly appreciate it. Next on the agenda are our city council, public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. First, I will call upon Toby Goslin, Troy resident, who wishes to speak on P02A. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I struggle too, so we have a lot of concerns. We're in a transition time. But first, I want you to know I'm not here to tell you how to do your job. Through the years, we have been supportive of the City of Troy. We are mindful of your hard work and endless hours you contribute serving on council. We understand the nuance of city government and public services. Together, we have a vested interest in the many things that make Troy great, including our property values and green space in our subdivisions. Tonight, we come to you for your voice and action. You have received my emails, pictures, concerns regarding the approach permit issued to a neighboring resident in Sylvan Glen on April 10th, 2019. My complaint was registered on March 16th. We are respectfully aware of the process of code enforcement, especially during the busy spring demands. When the tire tracks got deep and the path appeared between two neighboring residential properties, we followed up with housing and zoning. Our relationship with housing and zoning has diminished. If you don't care, why should we? Every homeowner and council member should be concerned knowing there is no ordinance to prohibit permits for second driveways and curb cut approach for the opposite, non-compliant side opposite the existing driveway when a resident drives over the curb, over the sidewalk, over the front lawn, on the opposite side of the house to reach his backyard. One would question the ordinance and the authority. Yes, there are many circle driveways in Sylvan Glen and throughout the area where the lots are large and accommodating to circle driveways. The ordinance speaks to circular driveways with second curb cuts. However, the ordinance fails to speak to second curb cuts for second driveways added to the opposite side of the residential home, opposite to the existing driveway, leading to the rear of the property line. For the purpose of clarification, the wording and/or circular driveways creates confusion open to interpretation. We remain hopeful council will vote to place a moratorium on permits for second driveway approaches / opposite to the existing driveway in the residential sub to prevent this oversight from repeating again. Please update the ordinance applied to right-of-ways, Chapter 33, Section 4.16, to preserve our property values for the greater good. I brought pictures. You already have pictures. I did not submit this last one, which shows the shared vehicle of a shared neighbor sharing this new driveway that was created. And I don't think this was our vision. I don't think this was the planners of the subdivision neighborhoods. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, I'll call on Joanna Darmanin, who also wishes to speak on P2A. Good evening.
Good evening. I am Joanna Darmanin. I am the voluntary association president for Sylvan Glen Homeowners Association and a 40-year resident of Troy, minus 10 years that I spent in Washington, D.C. I've lived in Troy my entire life. I'm pretty confident that the spirit of the ordinance as written was not to allow this type of pseudo second driveway to be installed at the opposite end of the front residential lot frontage. I'm sure that the authors of the ordinance didn't have an inclination that in 2019 someone would add a driveway opposite an existing driveway to access the backyard of a residential lot like we have in Sylvan Glen currently. The homeowner on Falmouth Drive has found a loophole in the outdated ordinance, just like others in the past couple of years, going back to the monster garage on Alpine, the 3-story storage facility backing up to residential lots on Rochester Road, and the neon billboards that we are all familiar with that are all over Troy now, forever changing the landscape of our city. We're coming to you guys tonight. City council members, we're asking you to take a look at this ordinance and figure out a way to rewrite it, tweak it, whatever you need to do to make it so that this doesn't happen again. Obviously, it's already happened, so there's one ugly driveway in our neighborhood that I hope you do drive by. You have pictures, but the pictures don't even do it justice. We are asking that you place a moratorium on any future permits for these second driveways that aren't really second driveways, and hope that you can take a look at that ordinance and take the time to study and figure out a way to make this work for our neighborhood and for others in Troy. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes those that have signed up for public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. This is an opportunity for City Council or staff to respond to public comment. Anyone on council or staff wish to comment? City Manager Miller? I know there was a letter provided to us.
Yes, we provide information, and we're just going to look for consensus if you want us to look further into it.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone? One, two. Looks like you have consensus. I personally think the letter was acceptable, but you have consensus. You have consensus. Any other comments by council? Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to thank you both for coming forward. And I've read your emails, and I appreciate the position you're coming from, and I know you understand and appreciate our position where we are as a city and our city staff, and everyone's tasked with following certain rules, and they have to follow them equally and evenly. So that can be tough. As far as providing consensus to city staff, I mean, I assume you're looking into potential options that may alleviate some kind of situation like this in the future, or at least providing some kind of information as to why or why not something may be a good or bad idea. But
yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that was what the plan was. But I look forward to seeing that. I thank you, and thank you both for speaking.
Councilman Henderson.
Thanks for coming forward. I did see the emails, and I drove by just to get a bird's eye view of the situation. It's not beautiful, but the questions I have would be, you know, what's legal, and I'm sure that's the direction that you're going to carry this. But also, what can an HOA do to try to prevent those kind of things? And in my dealings in real estate, HOAs are relatively powerful boards and can stop these kind of things. Is that a true story or not necessarily?
City Attorney Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, as to the first question, yes, we will need to look at the legality of it. We'll have to actually work with staff and figure out what we can do, if anything. Also, we'll provide just some more details about, again, there's nonconformity issues that we'll have to be dealing with. Also different lot sizes, all of the things that are mentioned in the additional information. As far as the powers of a homeowners association, it really stems back to what the restrictions are, and the homeowners association, they enforce their own deed restrictions, and deed restrictions are very powerful because they prohibit you from doing certain things. So deed restrictions are very powerful. The homeowners associations do have the ability to enforce those. It is possible also to be amending the restrictions too. There's a process for doing that, but that is a feasible option as well.
In amending the HOA deed restrictions, can they make those deed restrictions retroactive or not?
Again, I'd like the opportunity to really do some research on that, and that's not something that we normally would deal with because, again, our goal is to represent the city and not the homeowners. We don't represent the homeowners associations and can't really provide them legal advice.
So they would need to follow up.
They would need to follow up with their own legal counsel, correct?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hoderick.
I appreciate you folks bringing forward the situation that you're seeing in your neighborhood. And I think you guys appreciate, too, the tension between private property owners have rights, and then there's the conformity of the rest of the owners around them also. How do we protect those rights? And this is a dicier conversation than might meet the eye for us. And I guess one of the questions I might have is, as you're looking into this, how have other cities, maybe comparable cities, dealt with this? And the HOA idea, I like that, except for in my subdivision, our homeowners association isn't active any longer. And I don't think our subdivision is alone. So, I'm hesitant to layer our planning department and our attorneys with extra work, but I do think this is worthy. Our residents, there are a number of residents that are interested in understanding if we can do something, and it's worth exploring. I want to demonstrate that we're listening, that we're hearing, that we're working with one another, recognizing that this is maybe not a simple, there may not be a simple solution. So, again, we appreciate the constructive manner in which you came forward to us, and I guess I would like to understand what other comparable cities in the area what their ordinances might look like to protect this. I can't imagine anyone, on the one hand, I'm thinking, our language should have comprehended this, but how often is anyone going to want to do this? I hope not that often. But clearly it's happened, and if we can help our subdivisions protect what they feel are conformity concerns while still protecting property owners' rights, that would be the goal.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilwoman Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks, Mrs. Goslin and Mrs. Dameron. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, for bringing this forward. And I have to say, I struggled mightily with this one. Property owners have rights, and this is where we start to wade into potentially a very slippery slope. However, at the same time, when I read a memo that says, in theory, someone could, put concrete down on their entire front yard, well, that doesn't quite feel right, especially when just recently Planning Commission brought forward to council, and we have approved since then, design standards for the city, for new buildings. So it feels a little disjointed to not at least consider, well, what are other cities doing? Where might we also run into this situation in the neighborhoods or even different areas of the city? So thank you for bringing it forward. I thank you for your forbearance in understanding that the ordinance is what it is today, the code is what it is today, and that bell can't be unrung when it comes to the situation that you brought forward. So much like the Monster Garage, it's unlikely to change anytime soon, but we have the potential to perhaps prevent that in the future. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak before I call on Councilwoman Hoderick again? I have something to say, but go ahead first.
Well, you can go ahead.
I'm not going to say anything different. I think everything that's been said, has been well said. I have empathy for somebody that has to live next door to this or across the street. And not only that, but it's on the drive that comes into the subdivision. It's like the gateway into the subdivision. And I struggle also as Councilwoman Abraham with the rights of somebody to do something to their property. But when you have it does not look good, and the gravel that goes to the back, doesn't look good. But having said that, I firmly believe in property rights. If this gentleman wanted to make his whole front yard gravel, I don't know whether the government should get involved and tell somebody that they can't do that. I'm going to be anxious to hear what the city attorney has to say regarding that. This piece of concrete was done, to meet the code. and then it stops, and then a poorly looking gravel lane goes to the back of the house. I think it's the only one in the neighborhood. And I've been in that neighborhood many, many times, and there's a tremendous amount of circular drives that attach from one drive to another with that purpose. But I'm anxious to hear what City Attorney has to say. I do understand, though, it doesn't look good, in my opinion. That's my opinion, but it doesn't look good. If you're going to do it, I think you could make it look a lot better, for one thing. But Councilwoman Hoderick.
I guess I have a question. Did we consent that we would do a moratorium and the study, or do we need to, are we in agreement that there would be a moratorium for second cut until we sort this out, or I
didn't hear that we have that consensus. That was to have the city administration take a look at what other cities are doing in legal issues. Quite frankly, I don't think we should put a restriction on the entire city for people that may want to do this. This one's already done. I mean, it's done. So, was that consensus from the? You also wanted a moratorium?
No, that wasn't mentioned.
Okay.
it was a request, so I wanted to.
That's not what Mark Miller mentioned, though. He just said he was going to check into it. I wouldn't want a moratorium,
I think the question was not for a moratorium. The consensus was not. If you want to make that a separate issue, please do, but I do not believe that was the intent of those that consented.
Mayor, just to clarify, my understanding was moratorium was not included in that. A moratorium is a much higher standard, and I'll let the city attorney talk about that.
Well, certainly if you're going to be imposing a moratorium, we'd like the opportunity to draft a language for the, to enact it and make sure that it will withstand all of the legal challenges that we may have. So, we'd be happy to bring that back if that's something that council would like, but it's my recommendation that it not be tonight.
Okay.
Well, I don't even think that was a direction given. Do you want to ask that question? Is there a consensus to put a moratorium?
I brought it up because the residents that came to speak were asking, and I hadn't heard the conversation about it, and I thought in respect to feedback to the residents that came to talk to us and asked for it, I thought it was good that we at least discuss it. It sounds complicated, and it sounds like a step we may not want to take tonight, but I wanted to have the conversation at the table to at least entertain the thought. There's new construction. There are folks that are going to be putting driveways in. They might be putting circular drives in. If we do a moratorium, we're holding them up on their home construction. We don't get very many requests for this kind of a second driveway that's disconnected. So there's a trade-off to make if we do it. There's a lot of people that are going to be affected if we do a moratorium, and negatively in terms of their home construction. So I'm not advocating for it myself, but I wanted to at least make sure you knew we heard the request from the table.
Any other comments by council? Councilman Henderson.
The only question I would have on a moratorium would be, are we talking about a moratorium for all concrete laid in front of a house, or a moratorium for only second driveways to exclude circular driveways? That can get exceptionally complicated.
Which is why we would request some time to really.
I don't think we have consensus to do a moratorium here. So, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
I guess I would, when you're putting together this report or something, if you could at least include some potential, not language for an ordinance, but if it's a slam dunk, we can't do this, we can't do a moratorium because it's too broad, I would like to know that, at least from a legal standpoint. But it does seem like there's way too many possibilities for problems, but it would be nice to have an official opinion on it, if we could.
You're asking for a legal opinion on a moratorium?
No, I'm asking it to be included at least as part of the conversation or the report that we come. I mean, I think that I'm not looking for language for it, but I think that, well, I guess, maybe I am. I think that it's fair if we have residents coming to us and asking about it, and maybe it's not a good idea, that's fine, but I think we at least need to know whether or not that's something we should be talking about any further. We've had some discussion tonight. Maybe there's not consensus for you to include that. Maybe you were going to do it anyway. I don't know. But my thoughts are, we have questions. We've been asking questions. And again, I'm not advocating one way or another, but it'd be nice to have the information to at least know so that if we get asked again or the entire Sylvan Glen subdivision shows up at the next meeting, we at least know what we're dealing with.
I'd be happy to include some possibilities and some discussion about a moratorium. As far as the timing of it, I don't think it'll be here. I don't think it'll be done by May 20th.
Right.
Based on other commitments that our office has.
Is this going to take up a lot of your time to include this into this report?
The moratorium piece, probably not.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to regular business. There are no postponed items, so we'll move on to regular business. I-1, board and committee appointments. There are no mayoral appointments or city council appointments this evening. I-2, there are no mayoral nominations this evening, so I will defer to Mayor Pro Tem Baker for any city council nominations.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to renominate to the Zoning Board of Appeals for the terms expiring April 30th, 2022, Daniel Legowis and David Eisenbacher.
Support. Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Baker and supported by Councilman Henderson that we renominate Daniel Ganas and David Eisenbacher to the Zoning Board of Appeals for the term that expires 4/30/2022. Any further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes, motion passes. Thank you for Mr. Agas and Mr. Eisenbacher for volunteering to be on that important committee. Does that conclude the nominations this evening? I-3 is a request for closed session. Anyone on council wish to meet in closed session this evening? Just City Attorney Bloom, from my personal point of view, I read the document in the portal, and I support the recommendation from your office, and I assume by not calling for closed session, that's a consensus from council. Yep.
Thank you, and I'm glad for that clarification, and I was going to mention that we had made a recommendation and that's why you...
Do you have a resolution that you want to...
No, there's no need to take any action on this at all, no need to meet in closed session, and I'm sure that Ms. McMillan, who has been here and is ready for the closed session, would be happy to go home.
Thank you. I-4 is an amendment to Chapter 20 of the Troy City Code, Water and Sanitary Sewer Rates. I see Kurt Bovenseep is going to make this presentation.
Yeah, just a quick introduction with this item. Nothing's changed since we discussed in the closed session. It's a slight increase to both water and sewer rates, about $2 when you combine them together. So for an average customer, they'll experience about a $7.80 increase per billing cycle to deliver the good stuff and take the bad stuff away.
Okay. Got it. Any questions for Kurt? Thank you. Would somebody like to move the resolution? Councilman Baker.
Quick question.
City Mayor Pro Tem.
Just to clarify, this is not profit that the city's making. This is passed on to where we're paying for these goods, correct? It's not the increase in the rates, it's not because the city's just looking for extra revenue.
That is correct. Most of these costs are attributed to the cost of, we purchase our water from the Great Lakes Water Authority, and we dispose our waste through the Water Resource Commission for Oakland County. So these costs are attributed to the increased costs of both those suppliers.
Thank you.
I'll move it if you want.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
I'd like to move I-4, amendment to Chapter 20 of the Troy City Code, water and sanitary sewer rates as printed.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Baker and supported by Councilman Hamilton that we approve I-4, the amendment to Chapter 20 of the Troy City Code as printed in the agenda packet this evening. Further discussion? The vote, Councilwoman Hoderick.
I think when Mr. Bovenseep spoke, he said, as we discussed in a closed session, and just to clarify for the public, this was discussed in the budget study sessions. If I might have misheard him, but just in case that is what you said, I wanted to just clarify that we did discuss this in the budget study sessions that were open to the public.
Thank you. The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion passes. I-5 is the adoption of the Troy Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, better known as the BRA, proposed fiscal year 2019-20 budget and 3-year budget. I see Glenn Lapin, our Economic Development Specialist, is ready for an introduction. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. At its April 16, 2019 meeting, the Troy Brownfield Redevelopment Authority recommended approval of its 2019, 2020, and 3-year budget. You have in front of you a copy of that budget, and in a nutshell, the revenues that come in to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority are generated by tax increment from the approved projects by that authority. Where you see a blank line in there, that's because that project has not been generating any revenue as of yet because it's not open. They're kind of in progress, so that's the reason for the blank line there. Expenditures that go out on the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority are spent on eligible expenses related to environmental and then approved expenses along those lines for those very projects. At the very bottom of the page, you'll see the revolving loan fund status. There is one revolving loan fund project with the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, that's the MJR movie theater complex. So revenues that come in that generate from that project go to repay the revolving loan fund to keep that whole. And if there are any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you, Glenn. Any questions from council? Thank you. Councilwoman Abraham.
Thanks. Thank you, Mayor. I'll move I-5, adoption of the Troy Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, BRA, proposed fiscal year 2019-2020 budget and 3-year budget.
Support.
As printed.
As printed.
Moved by Councilwoman Abraham and supported by Mayor Pro Tem Baker that we approve I-5, the adoption of the Troy Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, BRA, proposed fiscal year 2019-20 budget and 3-year budget as printed in the agenda packet. Further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Motion passes. I see Mr. Lapin is anxiously waiting to introduce I-6, the adoption of the Joint Local Development Finance Authority Troy Subcommittee proposed fiscal year 2019-20 budget and 3-year budget.
At its April 22nd, 2019 meeting, the Troy Subcommittee of the Joint Local Development Finance Authority met and recommended approval of its 2019-2020 and 3-year budget. You have a copy of that budget in front of you. Revenues that come in are from the tax increment that's generated from that Local Development Finance Authority. You'll see there's a new revenue, a relatively new revenue line, the second line there, which is a reimbursement by the state through state revenue sharing for the exempt manufacturing personal property taxes that have been eliminated by the state. Local communities now get a share of that back, which is nice, and it goes back into this program. Expenditures for the Local Development Finance Authority go into Automation Alley operations. It also goes into infrastructure improvements in that area, including parking lot for the Automation Alley complex, and also sort of marketing costs, which actually is the foundation level membership for the Local Development Finance Authority. We're very happy to be supporting the Automation Alley, which does outstanding work throughout the state. And if any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you. Questions for Glenn? Thank you. Councilman Henderson.
I'd like to move I-6, adoption of the Joint Local Development Finance Authority Troy Subcommittee proposed fiscal year 2019-2020 budget and 3-year budget as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Henderson and supported by Councilwoman Abraham that we approve I-6, the adoption of the Joint Local Development Finance Authority Troy Subcommittee proposed fiscal year 2019-20 budget and 3-year budget as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
I-7 is the adoption of the Troy Downtown Development Authority's proposed fiscal year 2019-20 budget and 3-year budget. City Manager Miller, you will make the introduction.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. Before you, you have the Downtown Development Authority budget, and the DDA approved this budget on April 17th. And the one most important thing that I will say about this budget is the plan that we created is actually doing very well. We have sufficient revenues to cover the bond costs. And as you recall, those are AAA bonds backed by the full faith and credit of the city. We did add for the first year $25,000 for marketing, limited, but we also do median maintenance, and we have the program where we can help people. Oh, now I'm forgetting the name of it. What's the name of the program? QDI program. And so far, only 888 Big Beaver has utilized that. No one else has. This does note a $4 million revenue in the future from Somerset for the parking deck, and that will be in the future in the second fiscal year. With that, this is working very well. We have a good nest egg built up, and we'll keep moving forward and service the bonds.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Mr. Miller? Councilman Pennington.
I'd like to move I-7, the adoption of the Troy Downtown Development Authority's proposed fiscal year 2019-2020 budget and 3-year budget as printed.
Support.
By Councilman Pennington and supported by Councilman Henderson that we approve I-7, the adoption of the Troy Downtown Development Authority's proposed fiscal year 2019-20 budget and 3-year budget as printed. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Motion passes. I just want to echo City Manager Miller's comments regarding the plan. Everyone should be commended that had a part in that plan because it is a smooth running machine today because of the plan. And if it wasn't for that plan, the DDA would be in trouble today. But so thanks to everyone that's worked on that. Next is the consent agenda. There was an item placed on the table, a yellow sheet regarding J4C. Hopefully everyone had an opportunity to review that, and thank you to Councilwoman Abraham for bringing that to our attention. Anyone wish to pull a consent agenda item this evening? Councilman Henderson.
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda in the addition of the late submittal J4C as printed.
Support.
By Councilman Henderson, supported by Councilman Hamilton, that we approve the consent agenda as presented and printed in the agenda packet. Any further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion passes. If you are here on a consent agenda item this evening, they've all been approved. Next are memorandums and future council agenda items. K1A is an announcement for a public hearing on May 20th, 2019 for the preliminary site plan review, file number SPJPLN 2018-001, which is the proposed Chadberry Place south of Long Lake between John R. and DeQuinder, parcel number 88-20-13-127-020, section 13, which is currently zoned R1C. K1B is a public hearing announcement for May 20th, 2019 for the preliminary site plan review, file number SPJPLN 2018-0013, which is the proposed West Troy Meadows, north of Waddles, west of Livernois, section 16, currently zoned R1B, one family residential district. So please come on May 20th if you have any information or input that you want for those public hearings. Next is public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. I had a conversation with Mr. Nardi, and he did not wish to speak this evening at this point. So I will call on Cynthia Wilshire, a Troy resident who wishes to speak. Good evening, nice to see you.
Good evening. I haven't been here a long time. Your last meeting, you talked about the, bless you, the signage. And to that point, I had not seen anything in the papers or anything, and nobody else had that I've talked to, until I saw this article in the Troy Times that had a picture of this sign that you're considering, about the size of a postage stamp in the Troy Times. And I showed it to my husband. My husband's been in marketing and advertising for 40 years. He said, who came up with that idea? Somebody from one of the elementary schools? I said, no, this was a company in Flint that's charging us big money to put the sign out. And he said, mistake. Where did you find these people? He had never seen anything like that, and he suggested maybe you go to the grocery store or look at the signs of the fast food places and see what kind of signs they've got. They're marketing their stuff. This is not marketing anything. It doesn't say anything about our community. It's very boring. So I know at your June meeting you're going to consider waiting until then to discuss it, I believe, again. And so far, we haven't seen any of the signs from the DDOT for the freeway. I'm waiting for those. Mr. Tahuti told me that they would be better than the ones further down in Auburn Hills. So I'm waiting for that, and I think it would be wise if we put something in conjunction with their signs that would go with it. I heard them mention, someone mentioned something about a sign like mid-century modern. This is not a mid-century modern community. There are very few mid-century modern houses in this community. If you look around, they're all two-story brick colonials type things. I'd like to see something, a nice logo that really represents our community. And I know you probably don't want to hear this, but a lot of people like that old one with the large, tall building and the little thing from the historic center and houses in between, because they feel that really represents our community and how we've got history and we've grown. So it's a shame you got rid of it. And no, I couldn't find out how you arrived at the new logo that you're using. It just kind of appeared. And I know you people like transparency, but I haven't seen any in that area. You're doing a good job otherwise. You're doing very good for the city and the people that live here, and we're very proud to live here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes those that have signed up for public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. This is an opportunity if anyone from council or city staff wishes to speak regarding public comment. Councilwoman Abraham.
Thank you, Ms. Wilshire. It has been a while since you've been here. I wanted to comment on the last question that you had posed of, when did the design change for the logo? And I believe it was the spring or summer of 2016, because I remember it was my first year on council. It was discussed at our retreat, which took place in February. So it was brought forward in a council meeting. So I just want to assure you that yeah, you might have missed that one. So I just want to assure you that it wasn't done in secret. The other comments that you made about what does the city, what is it marketing, and does that sign reflect that? I think that was why we took a collective pause last week. Just understand, yes, some money has been spent, but before we spend more money, is this really the right thing to do? Is it the right thing for the city? We are certainly very mindful of taxpayer dollars and how we're spending it. So I thank you for bringing this up, and just know that we are taking it seriously, and we have very much a pause so we can collectively determine what the right thing to do is and the right way to spend our taxpayer dollars. Thank you.
Any other comments by council? Just to add to that, there was a presentation about 3 or 4 months ago. I think staff could probably give you the date when that was presented here to council. If you want to go online and take a look at that presentation, it was quite a lengthy discussion about this particular sign. So, thank you. Next are council referrals. N1 is a council referral report from Councilmember Hoderick. Did you wish to speak any further than the report, Councilwoman Hoderick?
Thank you, Mayor. The report speaks for itself, as you're indicating, but I would like to say from the council table for the record how really proud our community can be for our police department's involvement with working proactively to keep us safe and, heaven forbid, have to respond to any kind of a difficult situation such as an active assailant. We had the opportunity to attend a North American Active Assailant Conference last week, and a portion of it was dedicated to speaking to elected officials. Another portion was for school officials, appointed and elected. And I had the opportunity, and my calendar was open, and I was available to attend. There I learned things I wish I never had to learn, but I'm glad I know them and can serve in this role better as a result. One of the things that was shared with me by several people was the important role that our Troy Police Department has played in the region. There is a group called OAKTAC, and actually Mayor Pro Tem Baker was there at the same time to see our retired police chief, Gary Mayer, receive an award from the OAKTAC team for his leadership that he provided from 2009 to 2017. OAKTAC went from 6 agencies when he started in that role to 40. And what that means, essentially, is all of the agencies in this area are trained similarly, consistently, and if they respond together as a team, say Clausen and Troy at the border of an event that might occur there, they are all trained the same way. So no matter who shows up first, they can establish command and everybody will be able to work together. When you think of the power of 40 agencies speaking that same response language, and I'm using layman's terms, that's very powerful. So it was a very positive thing to see in the community. They're talking about reacting, but it's proactive work to react in the best way that they can. For City Council specifically, one of the things that the city manager, now retired from Aurora, Colorado, where the theater shooting took place, he said that he used to have a dismissive attitude about tabletop emergency response exercises, and he'd think it was kind of silly and ridiculous to do that. Having gone through what they did, he was grateful that his community, also a council manager form of government, a very similar city to this one, that they had done that and highly recommended it for elected officials in their communities. And certainly, speaking for myself, I would be willing if our police department and emergency response team here felt that that would be helpful for us to participate. Coral Springs, Florida shared that they've developed a PowerPoint presentation that they provide to their elected officials, and that they would be willing to share that with other departments to share with theirs, and certainly I think this team would welcome. And just one more point I would like to highlight. Coral Springs discussed the value of a clinician response team that they had happened to have established to really focus on the mental awareness and resiliency of all their first responders. They already had this in place before their incident occurred. And what that was is a pre-vetted group of counselors that already understood the specific nuanced needs of serving first responders. And that's another thing that I don't know if we have that kind of a thing here in Troy, but we should, because I think that is a challenge, and as we serve ourselves in the community, understanding the role of mental resiliency through these incidents, or even day-to-day work as first responders, the value of that was discussed several times at this conference. And that they're seeing the wear and tear on first responders, and it just brought it to mind. Those are some verbal highlights, and you can read my report in the agenda, but many thanks to OCTAC, and specifically Woodside Bible Church was a host facility. They had volunteers. I think there were close to 2,000 first responders attending the overall conference, and it was tremendously valuable to everybody, you could tell, who was in attendance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda are council comments. Any comments from council this evening? Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. We passed a budget tonight, and I just thought about it when you were talking, and I did want to reiterate, we had a good discussion about trails and pathways at our budget study session, and I also shared I think disappointment is what I said at the time about the lack of funding for trails and pathways allocated in this year's budget. I just wanted to remind city staff that I think our direction that evening was pretty clear to please come up with a plan and do it as quickly as possible so that we can still work toward that goal, whatever that may be. I think it's important to our community, important to most, if not all of us up here, and it's difficult to see where we've had the money not allocated like we had planned a couple years ago and had asked for that direction, but times change. And speaking of changing things in the budget, I will also mention that this budget calls for the termination of the Troy Trolley, or the Big Beaver Shuttle, And that money will be reused to, hopefully for Medigo is the plan, to bring it in-house and to increase service, which I think is very, very important for our community and for the seniors. And we had several hundred rides that were not able to take place this past year because of insufficient buses and resources. So hopefully we can fix that moving forward. And I think we're on a good path with that. So, and thank you to city staff for all your hard work on the budget.
Any other comments from council? Councilwoman Hoderick.
I just wanted to mention the Troy Police Department will be hosting a Police Memorial Day, the annual Memorial Day event on the 15th. It's at 10 a.m. And the Saturday, 2 days later, I believe is correct, is when the police open house is on the 17th. And if you have a chance to drop in to attend the memorial, that's an awesome opportunity to take a few moments. And then the open house is just a tremendous event, especially if you have children. But even for adults to stop in and just get a sense of how our department works to serve us and how we can lock arms with them, please take advantage of the opportunity. You can find more if you follow them on social media. It's a great place to learn more information.
Any other comments from council? Okay. Any comments regarding the reports in the packet this evening? Councilwoman Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to call attention to P2B, Troy's implementation of changes to election law. I would just like our residents to be aware that with the last November's election, there are a number of changes to the election law, including being able to be on a permanent absentee ballot voter list, and the ability to register to vote up to and including the day of the election. And as always, our city clerk is on the leading edge of in being innovative and making sure that people are aware of these changes and outreach that the city's clerk's office is doing to make sure people are aware of the changes to the law, how it might impact you, and what, I'll say, benefits you could choose to opt into, like that permanent AV list. Another item that was also in that report is the fact that, again, the clerk's office, always thinking broadly, is having a pop-up city clerk's office on a Saturday, June 15th at the Troy Library between 11 and 1, and it's essentially, it'll be a satellite office. So if you want a copy of a birth certificate or death record or register to vote, you can do that at the library that day. And then depending on how that goes, I think other dates will be set. So this is a really great tool for those that maybe work in the 8 to 5 time frame and can't get to City Hall while it's open. This is a fantastic option, and just wanted to make residents aware of that.
Thank you. Any other council comments? I don't see that anyone has signed up for comments on items on or not on the agenda from members of the public outside of Troy. There is no closed session this evening, so thank you for coming. We are adjourned.
Wish I could have attended.